You mind if we start with the pledge of allegiance?
No, we can do that.
If we could start with the pledge of allegiance, that'd be great. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Has everybody read the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah.
I did. I just didn't see anything on there because we had that discussion on the capital budget and there was nothing mentioned in the minutes.
That was towards the end.
Yeah. We talked about maybe proposing an article.
Did you have any notes, Ed, on us discussing capital?
The only thing I remember was talking about an article. And I have a couple of thoughts on that, but
Right.
Was that the,
with, capital stabilization
Yeah.
fund?
No,
Yeah.
The body of it, right? Yeah.
Sure.
So there, yeah, so there's like a capital items and articles on the warrant that was put in, item 5, but for the next meeting, we should have also had some discussion in the body of the notes.
so is it in there or isn't it in there?
Yeah, the discussion's not in the
Yeah,
minutes
right.
that we had.
I didn't think so. I didn't see it. Well, maybe we need to amend them a little bit, or?
If that's what the board
Yeah.
wants to do.
I mean, I don't know.
What do you think?
I mean,
It's on for this meeting as a topic of discussion. It's on for this meeting as a topic of
Yeah,
discussion.
all right. We'll let it go with that. Yeah.
Are you okay with
Sounds
that's
good.
cool. I just wanted
that?
to
Yeah.
identify it wasn't part of the minutes.
Yeah. So,
so can I have a
motion?
motion?
Motion to accept the minutes of May 13th.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Now, you would like to start with the budgets. Should we go over the revenues first?
Yeah,
Or
that'd be good.
would that be?
Yeah,
The budgets and-
sure. Do we have any changes? I didn't think so.
These revenues, these are the latest ones.
Yeah, so Jean sent out earlier her updated revenue sheet, so I compiled a list of what we would consider to be the FY '22 estimated revenue. I did update, specifically the indirect costs for the water and sewer were wrong on the last revenue sheet, so I updated those to reflect the right numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And I added the state assessments on there too, that was missing on the last
Yeah.
sheet.
Right.
So, and just specifically, I think for the new members too, these are what we estimate that we're gonna get for FY '22. So a lot of times, like, our estimates are low. And so, for example, we have already talked about the new growth number. And last year, the new growth number was estimated for $54,000, and we actually brought in $120,000. So that's an example of where we were conservative, and then we received a lot more than what we had estimated, so, this time next year, we'll see a different number for FY '22 as a result of how the year progressed.
Yeah.
But we can, so I think a lot of places we were conservative,
Well, especially considering the COVID thing, I mean.
right, and I
that's
think,
very
I really,
difficult.
I don't think that COVID is gonna have a
No,
negative impact
No.
on us, but I think
No.
what will have a negative, potentially have a negative impact is something like the cost of lumber is very high
Yeah.
right now, so is that gonna deter a lot of people from
Maybe.
doing building projects? We had extremely high numbers for our building permits, we're at like $34,000 in building permits for this year, which is above and beyond what we would have ever expected.
right,
But we don't know if specifically because of like the cost of lumber, is that gonna deter some people from
True.
proceeding with other building projects? Those are
True.
things that we just don't know.
okay,
But we also see, you know, like the amount of growth that's in Rutland, and we're
Mhm.
also seeing new house, you know, we got a permit today to build a new house, so we are seeing new growth in town too, and I think like over the next 5 years, after the whole lumber issue levels out, we're gonna see a lot more new builds in town. So 5 years out, I think we're gonna be looking really good.
hope so.
And you've got the 2% COLA in.
Yep, the 2% COLA is reflected on the expenditure sheet. And I put separate columns for that, that's why the sheet has some pretty small font.
Wow,
I tried to make it bigger.
But it's a $28,000 difference between when you add the COLA in
yeah,
overall.
Yeah, we did vote on the COLA.
yes,
Yes.
Yep.
indeed, we did.
Include that this budget.
I didn't know if the board
And
did
that-
that or not.
That COLA applies to.
So we figured out yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
that actually didn't happen on the payroll side, but
No.
no. It happened on the paper, but it didn't happen on the payroll side, so,
Okay, good. That would be a nightmare.
yeah.
Good. I'm glad to see we got the COLA in. I like that. I think it's important.
Yeah, they deserve that after the COVID and going up
I mean, it's
and working
strange.
through it.
Here, I'm making want to keep working from home, but I can't imagine why.
You know,
If you ever try working from home, I don't think it's a piece of cake that it is. The hiccup we had last year was on our local receipts. That was basically the excise tax. 'Cause
right,
the board was wise enough to give everyone deferred payments at the beginning of COVID. And we deferred it up until the 1st of June, so that'd be done by the end of May. We should have cut it off sometime in the middle, because people waited until after the deadline, and then they paid late. That whole 85,000 or something came after the year, and that's what tripped us up for the special town meeting, so. It's gonna be nice for the free cash next year,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
you know.
yep,
Other than that, we really didn't see any other drop-offs because of COVID, except for last year, so.
yeah, exactly.
The receipts in the
Yeah.
building side.
Yep, I mean, we
Lucky.
really, like, we didn't really lose too many businesses, and I think the couple of liquor licenses that we may have lost, we are already in the process of
Yeah.
replacing, so.
See that,
But there's certainly still low-value items, that we don't charge a lot for liquor license.
Right.
We don't, our tax rate's still equal for business and for homes, so
Right.
we don't, a
Right.
lot of the cities and towns that have a lot of business put a higher tax burden on them and give them a higher tax rate. They really get burned by this, not the Home Depots and Walmarts, because we're in the state area. Everything else that had these bars and other restaurants and things, they put a lot of their
makes it
income,
tough.
their revenues on those businesses, and they lost out, and that's why so many other towns have a lot tougher than us. One advantage here, the Edmond community is supposed to make
Right.
revenue off of the business.
That's true.
Another revenue that Jean and I are staying really conservative on is the marijuana, receipt.
Yeah.
So we received $10,000 this year. It was our first year that we got any, revenue from that. And it was from a year where they hadn't even done, they're not even at full capacity for what they can do. So we definitely expect that to be higher, but we kept it at 10,000 estimated for FY '22, just to say that we know that we're going to probably get at least $10,000,
Mhm.
and we can expect that we will get more than 10,000 from it.
But the town, we're only, with planning, we're only allowing cultivation, right?
Yeah, there's
There's no other-
One.
yeah, I think the planning, the way that the zoning is that we can't have retail.
We can.
We can, but
We're
not,
allowed retail, but they zoned it out.
That's
They
it.
wrote the zoning bylaws in such a way that unless you buy, to paraphrase, you need to buy a couple properties to own a big enough piece in the right area to even apply for a permit. And I'd like to see that change eventually, before it's too late.
Yeah.
The state's gonna give out so many permits, and it's growing rapidly, and once they saturate for what they
Yeah.
think the right sales are, they're not gonna oversell, because I think in other places like Colorado, they oversold the retail, and that's started bringing the prices down, and then they're stuck with all sorts of extra marijuana, they can't sell it, get rid of it, and it's illegal to transfer it out of state.
Mhm.
So they've made an even bigger problem for themselves, so the states, I think, will be very careful with that, what they give out for grows, what they give out for retail. But if we do make an amendment within the next year, we could probably still get a retail shop. The revenues from that can be staggering for us, staggering. So, serious percentage, like 25% of our revenues potential. We'd have to see exactly what Lester took in.
yeah, that would be interesting to see what some of
Well,
the.
that kind of an anomaly though, because they were the
First.
first to the
Right,
state.
but even if a shop sold conservatively
Mm.
$10 million in sales, which I think would be a joke for a retail shop.
Mhm.
3% of 10 million is gonna bring us 1%, doing it 30, then brings $100,000 out. Almost say it was 90,000. And if it was something stupid like 100 million, well, now you're talking about $3 million for a cut, which would be unbelievable if you have that taxes. So you'd have the ability to bolster cash into the capital with the stabilization accounts, or have a capital purchase stabilization, bolster that, and give pay raises to all the town employees, so we're not losing everybody constantly, and still have money left to cut taxes, literally cut taxes, which would be the biggest thing for everybody. If everybody saw even a 10% drop in their taxes, about the rate, their taxes, that'd be huge. And I think that potential is there from the retail shop. It's gonna be a
We'll see.
uphill battle to get there and try to rewrite the zoning to be permissible someplace. Because they said they don't wanna make it available everywhere. But even the grows, we have 2 outside grows. I don't know what's happening with the second one, Tom, the first outside grow. The CPC obviously should be up and running in full capacity next year. And the Higgins grow, I would assume they were planting this year. I think they were ready to be in the ground this year. So that crop will be harvested late fall, and we should know sometime early next year what type of revenue we'll receive from that, what their sales are.
We get the revenue through the state? They don't, it's not paid directly to us, or it is paid?
It's directly.
It is paid direct,
Yep,
from the
yeah,
growers
so-
to the town?
Yep, so CPC wrote a check to the town.
And how do we know what amount they've sold? The state supply that number? Or is it just
Yes.
the business themselves?
Well, we've done 2 things. The state monitors all the sales very closely. Everything they produce and how they handle it, where it
Right.
goes. Secondly, part of our agreement is that they have an independent accounting, audit announcement, so that will be done. The payment still comes early, the audit needs to be done within, I don't remember the time frame we gave, but we
All
didn't
right, that's all
work
covered.
too up, yeah, we just
Good.
dot the i's, cross the t's, we asked for an extra accounting, just to make sure.
Yeah, good.
It'd be hard to get past the state, because they got their
Yeah,
21 or 7%, they're not gonna miss out on any of it, so.
great. Okay. What's next on the agenda there?
Well, we're gonna, I was gonna ask Greg, seeing he's chairman, how did you, the selectmen, feel about the budget that we agreed to with the departments and stuff with the 2% COLA.
Well, obviously, it's balancing. We haven't
Yeah.
gone through it too carefully. We briefly had a meeting the other night, and, you know, I'd like to see that we're not struggling to balance a budget at this point in the year. I don't understand why yet. I'm not seeing a huge difference. We did have, something came off the debt service, didn't it? Remember, we talked about putting an ambulance on because something was coming off, so did that free up levy money?
Ted's been working on the debt section.
As far as I know, that's, all the numbers of that stuff is all according to every piece of information
Yeah.
I've got.
Well, I was thinking, I thought we had, remember we were talking about the ambulance last week,
Mhm.
whether to pay cash or finance.
Right.
And we were under the impression that something was coming off. Maybe I was wrong, maybe I was mistaken impression. But it seems, I'm surprised that it seems so easy to balance this year. Things are-
First time ever.
Gene is
Yeah.
on
Thank you.
transition.
Well, part of it, I think, was level funding last year because of COVID.
Is that what you're asking?
And the funds actually came in on target, and the same thing this year, I think that helps. Very pleased to see it, very pleased to see the school come in at 1.7% instead of starting at 12 or
Right.
something
Well,
outrageous.
that was a big deal, real big
That was
deal.
It
good.
was a respectable, reasonable number, and it was nice to see.
Well, they got a lot of help from the government too, so.
They did, and that makes us an exception year. I think next year we may be back into normal.
Well, no, I think they have a plan where we don't fall off the cliff.
Yeah. they do.
That's just good.
Yeah, hopefully that works out. That seems a good
Yeah.
presentation that they made.
I think a big reason why the budget came out the way that it did was because we had some big ticket items, like the Monty Tech assessment, that went down almost $50,000. Ellen, in the town clerk's office, the election expense went down like $35,000 because there's no big elections this year. And then there were a couple other items that the fire department was leasing cardiac
Yeah,
monitors, that fell off, that's all paid off. And then we also had some of our department heads that departed, so like the assessors, the treasurer collector, and so those salary lines also went down considerably because the other department heads had longevity years, so they had a higher salary. So those are a lot of the reason why it came in, the budget came in the way that it did.
Very nice to see. And then we didn't have much discussion about the capital improvement request. We want to save that for tonight with you guys, so.
Yeah.
We've looked at them briefly Monday night, but we haven't really discussed them in depth. As Dr. Marshall appropriately pointed out, we normally try to save some money for free cash to put into stabilization. I think this particular year, I'm not worried about adding stabilization and free cash because we literally took our almost 200,000 earmark for that last year to throw it back into the budget this year. And we're gonna get that back, plus the anticipated revenues will actually will be there. You know, so we should be seeing close to $400,000 in free cash to start with next year before the regular cycle goes through. So I think next year we'll have a better time of putting a couple $100,000 hopefully back aside for stabilization and continuing to grow it. But for this particular year, I'm not worried because of that, what happened last fall. It's not a poor handling of money, it's just the timing of that. We weren't allowed to take that, local receipt account and the revenues like we did. But we need to discuss what to do with the recommended purchases. The board thinks is right, finance committee thinks is right. And
Yeah, Jessica, did you put the reserve fund in the budget for the selectmen rather than an article?
The reserve fund, the one that didn't,
The
Gina,
10,000?
yeah, Gina had already explained that this has been a part of the budget for.
Reserves in the budget,
Okay.
is in the accounting, the 10,000?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was just looking at that. So.
It used to be more, but we had to cut it. And then, the snow removal, is that gonna be in an article?
That will have to be in the
Yeah,
article,
well,
yeah.
that's I was wondering about that. Those were a couple of things.
Well, so how are we gonna be looking, now that we're into May, with excess funds and accounts to cover some snow removal, possibly move it around without having to hit free cash off.
Jean and I can look at that on Tuesday.
There's usually there's something there, it's,
Yeah,
I don't know, how bad are we in the account? snow
the
removal?
selectmen did have to vote to expand the, ceiling on that, so,
I think
Did go
we
over.
tried to do it high enough that it wouldn't go again.
yeah, they didn't have to request for more, but I would have to go back and look at our expense account.
Okay. So we wanna have an idea what that's gonna be going into the meeting before we allocate the rest of the free cash. Make sure we want to
Was
allocate
the,
that.
the snow removal that I had picked up off the last general ledger was, 78,648. That usually comes from free cash. That's quite a bit.
It is.
Mm.
Well, and I think that's part of the budgeting, one way to balance the budget, you could drop your snow account, because you don't have to hit it on the mark, you wanna be close, but if you're really short 10,000.
Yeah,
You could steal it from there and just make it up at the end of the year with free cash.
we could use the, reserve fund 10,000. We didn't use that this year.
And that'll be part of the money they'll find when they go through.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the reserve account is used when they do the interdepartmental transfers, so if there's nothing left interdepartmentally, then they have to use the reserve fund.
Right.
Do you know how the budgets are trending as far as each department?
Good.
As far as I'm concerned, everybody's doing really well. We're gonna be good at the end of the year. I wouldn't recommend to have anybody stop spending at this point.
As long as they don't overspend. So if it was around $78,000, we had 10, I'd still need to save 68 of the free cash, depending what we want to allow for purchases. We've got to think about if we want to borrow or if we want to just, I hate to dip into stabilization, I'd rather borrow it than dip into stabilization for it. Unless we,
To do what?
if we funded anything, I'd rather
Oh,
borrow.
oh, yeah,
If we're not gonna fund it out of free cash, I'd rather borrow
Right.
for it and not buy it.
right.
Um,
We're not by it, yeah.
Or not buy it. I don't want to, well, I look at the load, yeah, a nice new loader's a nice thing,
Yeah.
I think the current loader's a 99, that's not awfully.
Well, no, they have
old piece of
two.
equipment.
One, the backup is the one that's dead,
Yeah,
supposedly.
I know.
That's what our information is.
I think that's just a wish list to throw out there, my
Okay.
guess, and I think we have, I don't know the status of the 1 tons, why we need another 1 ton dump, if it's just a wish list, I don't know. I don't think they're hurting for trucks, but I haven't talked to Jason myself to say that. I think those are easy to take off the list personally. The OPEB's gotta stay.
Yep,
I'd rather it be more.
yep. Well,
We're kind of jointly, I know, on the fire chiefs.
yeah, we gotta have that.
Yeah,
We pulled that out from under them last year because we had to roll that money through.
yeah, we did it twice.
Right, and now
Canceled
that
it.
vehicle's going 8 years old and like 130 or 40,000 miles. It should, all the police cars, we rolled over all the police cars
Yeah.
because they were all over 120,000.
Hmm.
He's way over that. It shouldn't be his first line vehicle. That's a necessity, it's not a wish list.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one thing we,
With the police cars, they get one every year.
every year.
Mhm.
Why doesn't that go into the operating budget?
That was our original intent. I don't know why it isn't.
Because there's the funds right now, we're under budget, right? You could take the police car, remove it from the CapEx, and if it's gonna be a consistent purchase every year, throw it into the operating budget for the police department.
That was the intention when we got them all set. I believe this is the
Mm.
fifth. This is the last vehicle.
Mm.
So they're all new. And I would hope at least next year we start doing that once they've all been replaced. I
Because
think this is the last one to
Yeah.
replace.
that's one of the best practices, I was looking up like the finance committee best practices,
Mm.
And that's one of the things I saw is like, if you have a police department that is buying a new vehicle every year, that shouldn't really be an article, that should be part of the operating budget.
It was one of those things that people don't realize, why they need a new one every year? Well, once it's run 5 years and these things have 120 or 30,000 miles on it, they start dumping money into them so fast, they're just a money pit, so you gotta keep replacing them.
Yeah.
The problem we had in the beginning was they weren't buying for
Yeah.
years past proper vehicles, and they would
They'd be
blow
good.
them apart. And then when they get a new one finally, everybody drove it nonstop, and in 2 years, it had 100,000 miles on it. So we had to make sure the chief agreed to get a rotation schedule, so they all get driven equally. And I haven't checked his mileage in a couple of years, we could do it again and check the miles in the vehicles. We should, see how we're doing, but they should be evenly distributed in, 5 distinct paces, so the newest one's coming off. And once that stuff is done, we agree to start funding one a year. But yeah, next year I'd like to see it, I'm not worried
Yeah.
about this point this year, but next year I'd like that in the operating budget.
Good idea.
We still have time to do it this year.
Well,
Well, we have that positive that we talked about last week with creating a capital stabilization fund, because the budget is under the levy limit already, and you can create that stabilization fund and still keep us at the same levy as we were the prior in '21.
right, we don't wanna lose our levy.
And then and we're not increasing taxes, and we're not really lowering taxes, but now we have, and the way it was explained to us is the capital stabilization fund can be used for any capital purchase. That could be the building repairs, that could be equipment, pretty much anything that we would, the government here would state being a capital purchase. And, I think that's a good idea, rather than see the money lost.
That's what we've been talking about doing, especially we got marijuana money.
Yeah.
Capital stabilization, capital purchase account like that is huge.
If I could make a comment,
Go ahead.
we did have some building inspector issues in the last, say, 2.5 weeks where the town building inspector did inspect the town hall and did inspect Henry Woods. And we discussed on Monday evening the concern that there is no line item that deals with ongoing building maintenance. And quite frankly, we are going to be under order, my guess is, on some areas in Henry Woods, and also we already know in some areas of the town hall. We don't have any numbers on that or anything, but I guess when we're talking about the stabilization fund or free cash or whatever, these things will have to be addressed in some reasonable way, and we probably should be things to consider whether we want a line item in the budget that actually talks about ongoing maintenance and repairs in our buildings, because this is something we just can't ignore.
It's actually been reduced.
Well, so there is, as you noticed, there is a maintenance
Yeah.
budget.
Right.
But that goes towards like electricity. Obviously where it was is nowhere near where it needs to be. And it's not something that it can be a revolving fund, so if we don't spend it this year, it can't revolve into the next year because we don't make enough of a revenue on like rental of the town hall. I think we make maybe $3,000 a year, so we don't make enough of a revenue to justify it keep rolling over. But something like the roof that needs to be replaced on the old town hall would be a capital expense
Yeah.
that would come out of, because it's one of those things that you do it once every 30 years. Probably in this case 50, but it's not something that you do frequently enough to justify having it as a line item on the budget.
But you had talked about the windows in the building here.
Yeah,
I
well, I
don't know.
talked about using like ARPA funds for that, but it's just that.
In general, we don't have a mechanism, like if we caught this roof mid-year, other than having a special town meeting, we don't have a mechanism to make repairs to buildings of any substantial size. So it would be wise, if we can't do a revolving account, at least set up another account that we can put money into each year. And if it's there at the end of the year, we just dump it over into free cash and refill it the next year.
Well, we already have accounts for town hall maintenance, the Henry Woods building, and repairs to town building.
Well, there is one for repairs at town building?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
They're just
repeat.
not they've never
not a
been
big
funded
amount
enough.
in there.
Yeah, they've never been
The
funded
Henry
enough
Woods
to
has been
justify,
50,000
like,
in it.
So that if we do approve at town meeting these repairs for the roof, those funds could go into that account.
Yeah, looks like it.
Could be used out of that account.
Appears-
The town doesn't have a bylaw on capital purchases, right? Like, minimums, like, it's gotta be 10,000, something like that.
We did have, yeah, some rough number we were going by.
I don't know.
I thought it was
I
5
can
grand.
look
The
it up.
procurement laws cover us on those.
Yeah, that's true.
See, but, as far as town meeting, I don't know what the number is.
yeah, I can look up.
Let's-
I
yeah,
can see
should,
if we
yeah.
have a code on it, but.
And it depends, you know, if they authorize us at town meeting to spend, let's say they authorize us to spend 70,000 in repairs. I don't know if we'd have to define what those are ahead of time, or if we just have to follow proper procurement rules when, but that's something we need to find out before we
Yeah.
make that account. These funds will be, like this, they don't have to go anywhere, they just be allocated and stay in the general fund until they use. We
Yeah.
don't need an account. But we should
We've
find
got
out
an
how much we
account
can
in
put in
there.
the maintenance account.
Yeah,
Um,
so we have an account set up.
Well,
Right.
the maintenance account has been reduced.
Right.
In 17, it was $7,000, and went down to $5,000, and I believe our proposed maintenance is $2,500 as part of this budget.
Because traditionally, just nothing has
It was
ever
never,
been
it was
spent
never,
out of that.
nothing was ever built to that
And
account.
as we've discussed, we have the old police station, there's tremendous space up there not being used. I would love to bring the clerk upstairs,
Yeah.
but we need a vault, not the huge, but we need a vault for current use
Mm.
records. So
Yeah.
most of them can stay downstairs, I've never got a number from Ellen for how big it needs to be. But we could put a vault up there, but it needs to be cleaned out, there might be renovations we might need painting, we might need to spend $10,000 in there,
Yeah.
fixing it up and rebuilding things, replacing things. And that's the kind of funds we need to have available, you know, to be used for projects like that, although that one's gonna sit empty, once if you go,
Mm.
we can take a tour and go look right now, I
Yeah.
don't know if you all see what it looks like, but it's
Yeah.
a pit.
Well, why wouldn't we be able to use the funds from the capital stabilization fund if that's created for the maintenance purposes, rather than?
2/3 or 3/4 vote from town meeting to take funds out of stabilization.
Yeah, that was the point.
That was
That
the-
doesn't sound like what they're talking about
Right.
now.
So that could be approved at a town meeting, but
Mhm.
outside of town meeting, you
Mm.
couldn't just go to it.
Spend it, yeah.
You know, if you get some downtime, you get, hey, we got a week with nothing pressing, well, let's get something done over there. But there's no way to do that, we can't just spend the money.
So you're proposing we increase the line item of the current budget? Or can we create a new account, a revolving account?
Well, we
that
we
rolls
don't
over?
need to, that line item should work, it says for
Mm.
Yeah.
town buildings and maintenance and repairs, that would work.
Repairs to town buildings.
So I mean, we could,
Go right in there.
if the town building needs a roof, there's $270,000 right now to play with for the 22 budget,
Mm.
Before touching the levy.
before touching the levy limit.
We're still 200 under the limit?
Yes. That's why we proposed the capital budget stabilization.
All right, so a lot of those could be funded out of that, but once again, then,
Mm.
I still see no need for another loader.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know,
Jason was in here, he said that was his number one.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, he said he needed a loader above and beyond that, even the 40-year-old trucks. That's where he presented to us.
The reason we talked about it was some of the new equipment is very expensive, that we don't have enough to handle it on a particular year. So the point was made was start a fund, and then
and
For
those-
instance,
Yes.
the people have an idea what's in the fund, they know what they want, okay? And then the fact that we need to go to town meeting, well, you're gonna take 200,000 out for a loader, you can plan for that and take it out at the meeting. But the thing you guys are talking about, that's not what you want to
Yeah.
do. You want the fund like you just said,
This hasn't
where
been
if you
dis-
need to get something done now, do it.
This hasn't been discussed at the DPW commission.
Oh, yeah, no, I know that.
True.
I'm just saying, we're just,
No one there has heard a word about wanting anything new, so.
Mm.
um,
They, yeah.
He
Now,
didn't
Rob-
bring it with his regular budget, we literally browbeat him into coming back in with a list of capital requests, because he hasn't really presented anything in the 3 years I've done this, and we were talking about it at some point, 1 year, it's gonna be
Mm.
it's like an ambulance, there's no other option, you know, it's gonna be a product.
Well, he has a brand new fancy excavator, but that we got through chapter 90 funds because it's for road work, and I wonder if the same can't be done for loader. The primary use for a loader down there is moving sand and salt,
Right.
you know, for snow
Right,
removal,
right, that's
and
what we
for
understand.
snow removal. That's the 90% of the use. So it may be well within reason to ask for that at chapter 90 funds, and not even touch the money. We're still setting up, I think, over 900,000 in the chapter 90 fund accounts. So there's money to use, and I'd rather pave more roads as well, but we can only do so much at a time. Both for the sidewalks are going soon in South Barre, and we'll start road work.
Now, is Williamsville paid out of chapter 90?
Yeah.
Because you might be able to redivert some money too with ARPA, because they included stormwater into the guidelines. So rather than taking that money for, you know, for stormwater out of chapter 90, you take that money out of ARPA for chapter 90.
I don't know how much of that we actually collected. There's gotta be some drainage in that road for stormwater. And they're gonna redo it, but they're redoing that, I think they're redoing the water line, the sewer line, possibly extending one or both, as well as reclamation and repaving when it's all done. But we're waiting on the engineer designs anyway, to just make it back to us and we can move forward.
But with the capital budget stabilization, just to bring that back around, if looking at the town's 5-year capital budget, there's some significant expenses in there. And that's why we were kind of looking ahead and saying, hey, there's a couple big projects outside of the fire department, which is probably the largest
I'm
project.
surprised they didn't ask for another ambulance this year,
I think
because
Next year.
the other ones, yeah, it's crap. But,
The thing that Rob was pushing too was the Station 2 renovation.
yeah, what's he wanna do down there? I
Think-
have no idea.
What did he?
he wanted to, so they got a bunch of equipment, right? I think it was expensive equipment, turnout gear, maybe they call it, something like that. And there's no place to properly store it. They're literally storing it on hooks, so like $3,000-4,000 pieces of equipment that are on like nails in the wall. He wanted to build, I believe, a locker system,
Yeah, it's not.
if my memory serves me correct. You know, so.
20 years ago, Christopher Alt, then junior firefighter or new firefighter Rob Rogowski and myself built the lockers in Station 1 for about $250 worth of wood, a couple hours of time from down there. They still function, and no one's ever done it at Station 2. But yeah, they should have lockers, absolutely. Here's multiple $1,000s per set. Typically, you hang your coat up, get a place to hang your helmet, put your gloves up in a rack to dry. That way, when you come back from the fire, everything can kind of spread out and dry. Otherwise, they just get collected and ready. But I was wondering what he would spend. That's, I guess if no one's gonna volunteer to build it at this point, that's the way you have to go.
He did say they were doing a lot of work down there,
Yeah.
volunteering a lot of
Yes.
time
Yeah.
and getting it back up, you know, because the other station's been closed down, so they've been focusing on time.
There's still a dirt floor and half.
Yeah, that's what he's saying too, yeah.
There's a dirt floor and there's, it's
Weird.
by no means what you call a modern fire station. They got, last time around, they got plumbing, so they have the shower and toilet that function. So yes, I was just curious what else he was doing with that request for help. It definitely needs work. Definitely needs work.
Because I know that was one thing he was asking for.
That would be nice.
60.
I think they still have not just hooks, I think a lot of them just have the stuff on chairs or on benches. Just all piled up and stacked, like you put you roll your trousers down over your boots, set the boots, put your coat on, put your helmet on, it sits in the chair, which doesn't help anything dry out. So. I'm surprised anyways.
I mean, that's another small item where, I mean, you look to increase his operating budget if he truly needed it, right?
I think the operating budget is okay. That is a special, you know, if you start to bump the operating budget, then when they don't need it next year, it just has extra money. There's plenty of ways to spend it. We could,
Get it back.
we firefighters can spend money easily. So I'd be worried about putting too much in the budget there unless there's a need. You
And we don't really have to expand the budget to 2.5%.
We just know, I don't think there's any need to,
No,
right?
Well, other than next year,
we might have to, but if we don't this year,
right.
it's showing the townspeople that we're working
Well,
True.
to help.
you know, if you make the capital improvements and purchases out of the excess general fund to use it up, then whatever we have from stabilization can, from free cash can go into stabilization.
Mm.
Roll over
Yeah.
that way. Just have all those things budgeted.
I guess, where are we gonna get the money for the fire car and the police car? Out of the budget? Is that what we wanna do this year?
I wouldn't say the fire car, but the police car, if it's something that's gonna be a consistent purchase year over year.
I think we
Next year.
pretty much decided on that.
So
I think
it
that
should-
was-
Then why don't we increase that line item this year and not show such an imbalance in the budget? You know, people would be wondering why we're taxing them so much if we have $200,000 left over, because you're not allowed to tax this excess. And it's never been our goal. But if we do put that into the budget line item for the police this year, that will take away some of those excess funds and put that line item where it needs to be because it's gonna stay.
I think that's, going forward, we wanted to continue that.
So why not do it now and get
stop
rid
it.
of those
So I think
excess?
you're right,
Yeah.
that's the thing to do now, get
But
that
we
off
have
the
the
table.
room to do it.
The only thing I would say is this year a more expensive vehicle? Because in the capital improvement plan, he has 40,000 per year.
Yeah, this year it's an SUV. It's either SUV or, no, it's the SUV, not the
Probably
pickup.
SUV.
What if we meet him halfway and give him 45, he's gonna find the other 10.
Well, he buys
I'll bring him in and you can tell him that.
I think he has different vehicles for situations.
Yeah.
He has a truck one for one case and whatnot, and I think this one was another case. Probably,
They'd probably keep 2 SUVs, a couple, I
Yeah.
don't know, I'd think 2 SUVs, 2 cars and a
Yeah.
truck, I would think. But
that's what I
Yeah.
would think too, makes sense.
the car, general patrol and SUVs.
Yeah, they have 2 Chargers, the chief's car, the other SUV, and then the pickup truck. So,
So you have to,
So which one is he,
the
This-
SUV, not his chief car, the other one.
and that's gonna be the most expensive vehicle we'll see at 55. I think.
Yeah.
I think the Cruiser's the 35 or 40.
Until the SUVs start costing 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but there's also the state bid, we get, back in the day when you could buy a Chevy Silverado for, 45,000, the state bid price was 26 and 29.
Mhm.
You still get a reasonable for the state bid, it's outfitting, that's never gonna get less expensive, I think, the lights and sirens, everything is expensive as well.
If you put it at 55, worst case, some years you have money roll into free cash, right?
Mm.
Well, I'm sure if it's in his budget, they're gonna.
It might not end up in free cash.
There's gonna be vests or ammunition or something.
Uniforms.
I would hope,
That.
and we could talk to the chief about that and say we'd expect to see it come back to free cash. Because I don't like to use it and lose that attitude that a lot of departments have. Like right now, we got a month, we gotta burn this money somehow.
Mm.
Please don't. If you have it left,
Mm.
let it be left over. Let us have the free cash. 'Cause
Mm.
everybody remembers the tough times, the tight times. So if anyone's listening, if you have excess funds, don't feel like it's useless, please. Just stick on track to what you're doing, and that makes us go better for everybody, and that gives us years like this too.
Good job.
So on the fire car, would we do that as an article?
I think so, because that's like a once in 6 or 7 year purchase.
As an article for this year? Okay, that,
Voted at town meeting, yeah.
Yeah, the chief car, because that's like an every 5 year, 6 year purchase. It should have been done at least last year or the year before, but
yeah.
if we do that once every 5 year, treat it like a police cruiser, once every 5 years to replace it, then we just gotta have to put it up once every 5
but
years.
if you're just adding it to his budget,
Not,
Well,
no,
you
not add the fire car to the budget, right?
No,
That was the
no.
plan.
If you add it to his budget, then he's gonna have an extra, his chunk of money every year that's gonna go
A
wherever.
new car every year.
you can't add it to his budget specifying it's for a car.
You can, but what's he gonna do? Then he's gonna buy a car every year.
Well,
They're gonna be
we're
fine.
gonna
It's pretty
buy
low.
one every year.
No, he only needs one every 5 years, he only needs one. He's gotta keep the second one for a runaround vehicle for the inspector and the on-duty personnel.
But he's
Otherwise,
been
he
getting a
should.
car review.
No, we're talking the fire
Fire
chief.
chief.
No, fire,
Fire
fire,
chief, not
fire,
police chief.
not police.
Oh, you're talking the fire.
Yeah,
The fire,
chief,
yeah,
I was
right.
like-
Oh, no, the police will put it in the budget,
Put it
yeah.
in the budget.
Right,
yeah.
but, and the fire car though is
That's
not,
The fire, no, that's
so,
gonna
so
stay.
that'll be an article,
So the police, he can roll out of the capitals and put that into his account.
right.
See, OPEB needs to go. Right?
Up. We should be doing at least, our goal was supposed to be 25,000 a year for that, and we never come close. The idea is to get up ahead enough so when people do start drawing out of it, it can self-sustain itself off of its interest and not be something we're constantly funding. If I understand it properly, we need to keep bolstering that.
How about the feasibility? That has to go too, right? Because we need the feasibility.
That could go into the budget this year, of the general fund.
Can you put it in as a one-time line item?
Well, I mean, anything next year, anything next year, you can say you guys get $0 for the next year, right? I mean, I think, it's up to you guys on how you wanna do it, but.
When we, the phrasing on the language on the floor is either raise and or appropriate the
Yeah.
money.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For
So you
every-
raise
for every-
and appropriate.
We raise and appropriate for every budget, every purchase and everything. So I don't believe there's any reason we can't say that, raise and appropriate that money. If people say where it's coming from, it's just coming out of the tax levy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
And that's,
That's-
that's, once that's done, they should be able to, I haven't talked to committee yet, we've been staying.
But that's an article,
Yeah.
that'll be done as an article.
That's gonna be an article, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
You're talking feasibility?
Mm.
Or-
Right.
right, feasibility as an article, because it doesn't go on forever. It gets done, you pay it, it's over.
Committee's done
Gets
their
bigger
work.
next year.
Hopefully selected site or sites, what they think they need for a building. And then the feasibility study, if it can be done, and then we'd have to go for what RFP to get proposals, and we'd take one of those and get plans drawn up and go out with RFQ, and they could start construction, but we're probably still a year away from that happening. But we've gotta move forward with at least this feasibility study.
The
Well,
first piece of the puzzle.
We're gonna have an issue though, like, because it's not gonna, if we do the fire chief car, feasibility, and the roof, and OPEB, all on articles, we're gonna be over, and snow removal, we're gonna be
Free
over.
cash. Free cash, you mean?
Yeah, it's not gonna be enough money to cover all those expenses.
That's why,
So
That's why I say, can we put the feasibility into the operating budget? Since we're already under budget,
Right, that's what I'm saying, it should go in the
Yeah.
operating.
yeah, I think that's what he said.
not at an article, yeah.
Right, that should be in the operating. It'll still get presented with the omnibus.
Yeah, and
So it'll be in an article,
don't
but
they word it, their budget and add that in, and so much, you can have so much from raise and appropriate and so much from something else in the one article.
I think we just specifically, we specify stabilization,
Yeah,
we specify borrow, or we specify raise and appropriate.
yeah,
It's one of the three usually. Unless, I don't think we divide that up.
but you can take that as a raise and appropriate,
Right.
and it comes out on,
The general fund.
yeah.
Now, how much was it under the levy limit, 200 what? They were under?
273, 663, 66282, to be exact. 82 cents, that's 82 cents.
Okay, so we're looking at 55 for the police. And 52. And that's gonna take 107 off. Goes to 166. We still have 166,000, and what's the, free cash at this point?
229.
229. I mean, this is very unusual circumstance to be in. I just want to go back and say, we've got to miss something. We don't get to do
I
this
agree.
like this. And Claire, when's the last time you can remember being in this situation this time of year?
having extra money and,
At this level especially.
yeah,
I-
I don't ever remember,
No, I
No,
don't even-
I don't know.
and that's been a long time.
Well, you know,
Always
we did get a lot of funds out of the
Right
COVID and the CARES
below,
Act stuff, which
right
helped
around
some
the end
things.
of it.
That definitely helped, yeah.
And our administrator here picked up that grant to start digitizing records, which is something we were gonna be placing. We've been talking about putting that on the budget, but haven't had the money. Now we don't have to. That's close to $100,000 we don't have to spend.
There's been a lot of good grants that save the town money.
And that reflects here. Those are things we're normally pushing out money for that we haven't had to do this year. Normally, there's a much longer list of requests from people that want things. Alan's been asking to digitize for a while, and we haven't been able to do it, so.
Are there any grants for that?
Yeah.
You already got it.
Yeah,
You got one?
yep.
That's good. Getting-
After
getting
town
done.
meeting's over, that will be our project.
Oh, boy.
All right, so
So the total's 502 something, right?
what's that?
The total between the free cash and the,
Yep, right,
It's
so
like
I'm
502.
separating right now things. If we take those out of general fund, the general fund, we down to 166.
mhm.
What about building maintenance?
That
We
should-
increased that to take care of the roof?
If we can, that's we have to find out, is if we can, how much we can spend out of that maintenance without a meeting. There might be a cap on how much we can spend as a board, even though it's pre-approved,
Yeah.
without town approval. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know
That's
what
the
that,
procurement law.
yeah, we don't know, that procurement law is everything, no matter what, you gotta go through the process. But like, for example, most associations, they collect their funds and they have a general rule that the president can spend up to X $100 without the board, like, so they need to send flowers or something for somebody. Then bigger purchases the board approves, and I gotta believe there's something like that here, that we can spend up to so much money before the town has to approve the specific purchase. I don't know that, but I would be shocked if there wasn't a safety net like that. Who wants to give me 50,000 and let me spend it on maintenance? I mean, come on, nobody,
Exactly.
you know. There's gotta be, so if we could, yes, we should definitely bolster that account. Maybe we use it in small chunks. It's a good way to put some funds into it and try to get some things done in some of these buildings. But if we still have that money, the Ruggles Lane generator is a great plus. Dr. Marshall was saying that when we do lose power in the winter, they have pipes freeze up there.
Mhm.
And that can be an
Well, same thing like
expensive nuisance.
Jessica was saying about even like that roof, like if it's leaking, that's gonna cause more damage down the road, right?
Right, it probably already has caused some, but yeah, it's gonna get worse. I talked to Bill, he said it's something it's gotta be addressed. So we need to get down that.
Have we got any estimates on that yet? No.
I haven't gotten estimates. I went based off of the estimate out of the capital plan,
Right.
which was 35,000.
That's definitely.
Yeah, it sounds a little
I
shy.
would say,
Construction
I
materials.
think that's probably conservative, especially given the fact that it has to be.
I haven't even thought about it. I'm assuming it's asphalt, it's not,
Yeah. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
it's
it is.
it's an
asphalt.
asphalt roof, which is.
But I think that was put on there when the town hall burned.
Yeah.
The issue is you open up a can of worms, you know, you take the roof off and you get rotted wood.
Yeah, that's easy enough to replace as they go. I don't think it's gonna be any large portions that are gonna have rot like
Yeah, I
that.
agree. 'Cause
But
it's-
inside down below, we may have damage to,
Yeah. Ceilings.
ceilings, which gonna be, if it's horsehair, not so much, they hold on pretty well unless you get a lot of water. If it's sheet rocked, that gets damaged easily, insulation could get wet, it'll mold. So we definitely wanna get it fixed up. But that building is, I don't know what to guess, 100 feet by, maybe more, maybe like 120 feet by 80 feet.
Maybe.
I'm just trying to picture it. So the roof sections could be 4.5, 5 squares each, not more than that.
Mhm.
If you get 120 by 80, you get 8 by 12.
Mhm. Yeah. A lot of shingles.
It's-
If I could just recommend that we have a very preliminary engineering study done of the major roofs of Penny Woods, which I think is in pretty good condition, other than there's some fascia stuff that's pretty rotted on the front of the building. and the town hall. And with a very preliminary study, they can give us a real close guesstimate of what it may cost to, and we may be even able to get that before town meeting, depending on what, services we can get from some, local boot typers, Kid Luco, who has a little bit of affiliation with our community, is usually very good at responding to the town of Barre or the Barre Regional School District because of his roots here. So we might be able to get at least a very preliminary idea that would give you, the information you might need in the town hall to explain what you might need to do, rather than kind of guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need to get better numbers.
Yeah.
If it was even 45 squares, which would be close to that, as I said, even at 500 a square, which is a reasonable going rate now, we're looking at a $45,000. And that's before the jump in prices on asphalt and shingles and everything, which could make it. That's normally almost half the cost of the roof. So that 20 some odd from roof material could literally be 60 right now. We'll have to see how high it gets. Dr. Marshall is very right, we're gonna have to get a better number beforehand. Somebody shoot us a number, and I'd be prepared to see that go, I would think at least 50,000 in that hole for it, maybe more. To be safe.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I was going through my notes, Claire, and
Yeah.
one thing I didn't see, and I don't know if it comes out in an article, I know it's a small amount, but they did present to us, was Wachusett Greenways.
Thousand.
That's
Yeah,
usually an
that's-
article, right?
that's
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
It's
Yeah.
small, it's a.
I think
it's
$1,000.
It's
$1,000
in our
bucks, yeah.
budget.
I just didn't see it
Yeah, it's in
anywhere.
It's under Parks and Commons,
Yeah.
I think.
We make a donation to that.
I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, it's a budget line. So I noticed that, and I thought that's good that it's gone under there. It was Parks and Commons.
no, I think usually it's an article, a separate article.
Yeah, it's been an article in
It's
the last
usually an article, yeah.
Yeah.
last budget, yeah.
But
I just didn't see it on the capital request, and I wasn't sure, because I know they presented to us and I didn't see it, so. I didn't know if it was supposed to be on some documentation.
Of course, huh?
no, it's not on there now. It was on there on one of the first sheets.
Yeah, I thought I saw
Yeah.
it too.
Because I was thinking that would be a good, put it in as a line under, item under Parks and Commons. Well, we do it every year.
Yeah, it'd be the same thing as a police car, right? If we're giving that
Yeah.
$1,000 every year.
Yeah, you don't have to, you could do more or less too, depending on what's going on, but, I've never really tried to gauge community involvement in that, how often people are on there, but it does bring people through to our town, because
Yeah.
we're sort of on the end of the trail, which helps bring people here, which is good for businesses and just good for the town in general,
Yeah.
you know.
We use it frequently, my family, so we see tons of people out there all the time.
Oh, yeah.
They've never asked for us to give any more. Doesn't mean we can't, but.
Yeah, it beautifies the town.
Where are we on the sheet?
Could you give us an idea of what you've got for articles?
Outside of the financial ones,
Yeah, what's gonna be on the warrant?
there's, some planning board articles that have to do with the zoning.
Bylaw changes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then other than that, Dylan requested, the change in this, from the selectmen to the select board.
Very
Just
slow.
all of
That makes sense.
That's best practice, or the newer best practices. And then
I didn't know if we had any
I mean,
citizen ones.
It's not,
No, I
it
don't
closed
think
today,
there
right?
were-
Today we
it
closed?
closed today, yeah. I didn't see any citizen petitions, not, I mean, unless Ellen hasn't told me, but I don't think we have any citizen petitions.
Yeah,
Gonna be a raid.
well, that's good.
Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
be pretty much an administrative
Short
town
one.
meeting.
Almost like last year.
So can we recap what we're gonna do with this capital list?
I was gonna say, so we'll leave
Yeah.
the chief car for an article. Do you wanna leave the renovations for an article, or is it? Cause that's what we suggest we could put in the budget, but if we do, it's gonna go every year. I don't know if he needs to spend that every
I
year.
go for a separate article.
Okay.
You can explain, you know, to the people that are interested.
In the feasibility study, we're gonna, raise and appropriate from the general fund. Now, that should, that should just be an article, that'll be a general fund article. And the police car, we're gonna roll into the police budget.
Okay.
The town hall roof, I would suggest we up it to, we ought to earmark it for even 60 for now, and we can take it down later, but earmark it for 60. And when we find out what it is, we can amend that number before, in our meeting, before meeting, we can amend that number to be accurate.
It's gonna be more than 35, for sure.
I think so, yeah. And if it comes in at 35, then we have 25 to throw back in the stabilization again. We'll
Good,
just
that's
adjust
good.
that.
So how are we funding the 60? Separate article, free
Why
cash?
don't we do that out of the general funds? We still have 166,000 in the general fund without touching the free cash.
Okay.
So if we take that, make it 60,
So you're gonna take that for free cash?
nope,
No,
gonna leave it in the general fund. Gonna leave us at 106,663 in the levy limit still. And then the balance is what? We have the generator and the OPEB. Do we wanna talk about OPEB? What, do you wanna bump OPEB to 25 this year? Get more money in the account. It's still our account. We're not, people gotta understand, we put money in OPEB, we're not spending it. We're putting it away into a savings account for our, post-retirement benefits, and it gains interest when we put it away. So we're just gonna shift
We gotta do it anyway.
25,000 since we have the opportunity.
Is there enough with the snow removal?
yeah.
We still do have the free cash. Which I originally wasn't worried about spending free cash this year because there's gonna be so much more coming next year, but we haven't touched it yet. We
Mhm.
still have 135,000 available.
Okay.
Also, you're talking raise and appropriate right now.
Yep, still talking raise and appropriate.
Yep.
OPEB.
OPEB for 25, is that, you guys agreeable?
Yep.
Sure.
Maureen and Dylan, you want pipe in on any of that?
If I might, if I could just, the OPEB issue, one thing about the OPEB issue is that if you got into financial trouble down the road, you can, on any annual budget, use OPEB funds to pay health insurance if you had to. So that is the savings account for, of course, retired employee benefits, but you can also use it out of that trust fund that you've established for regular payments to, health insurance if you had to. So if you put more money in that, if you got really in a bind down the road, you could use it to help you move through a particular budget year.
Thank you.
That's good. Good to know. So
Yeah,
you got no problem moving 25,000 there then?
I would recommend, even if you wanted to move a little more. I only say that because, one, you're going to get pats on the back from your auditor. We probably need pats on the back from your auditor.
We know that.
And it does provide you with a little safety net for health insurance costs, which on any given year can really shake the tree, as you know. I would say we're very lucky this year because schools have come in low, but most of this money that we're looking around at 100,000, my guess is that's the typical increases in school budgets. The concern there's some monies coming to the schools through December of '24. They should be able to manage very carefully, and I give Cheryl Duvall wonderful credit because she was very good at her job. So that there's no big cliff, that they can kind of mitigate any really large increases to the towns. They should be able to. Monty Tech, I would say, they too have a very strong business manager. And so, you know, if they can stabilize those school assessments, that's a huge thing for the next 2 or 3 years for the town, huge. So I'm hoping that that ESSER money that they have and the new monies that will be coming to them will be utilized in a fashion that works for the town and as well as for the schools.
Okay.
So does it have a better number than 25?
Jessica, how much money do we have in that account, in that trust fund? You have any idea? Can you find
I
it
don't
on
know
the?
how much we have in there. I think it was only started a couple of years ago, if I'm not
Yeah, about-
mistaken.
Yeah,
Maybe
probably
3.
30, 40,000.
So there's probably, I would guess,
we
like
haven't
about
put-
40,000,
Yeah.
50,000
Yeah, I don't
before
recall
any
doing that,
interest
yeah.
or anything.
That's good estimate, right.
I feel 25 from 20 were good, it's a good number. It's more than
You know,
we anticipated.
Because that brings our general fund levy at, we're at 81,000 now, and that's what we're talking maybe for snow budget.
Hmm.
So that leaves us in a good position when we have the free cash available. Then we haven't talked about the DPW items. I don't believe, if they needed a loader, they would come with a loader without being prompted for it, but I don't know. I just, so we have two, we have a loader and a backup, I don't know what they're like. We can ask and find out if we had to make a change in another meeting, we could, but I'd hate to jump on spending $250,000 for, just because we want to know. To me, the loader seems to work just fine. It's, you know, it's up here plowing in the commons and down at the fire station. I haven't heard of anything being wrong with it. Doesn't mean there's not, but I haven't heard anything. So the only other item to talk about would be a one-ton dump, and I don't know the status of those vehicles either. We could wait till a commission meeting and, well, we won't.
Hmm.
We want to have a commission meeting, it'll be the day before meeting.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
And
I prefer to say no on the loader, and I'm personally, but I don't know if anyone else wants to comment.
What did we decide on the generator? Ruggles Lane
I
generator?
mean,
Yeah, that should come out of the,
We're gonna raise and appropriate the generator, right?
That's what I think, right?
just out of the general fund, it just said raise appropriate.
I think one thing that we need to look forward to is obviously after we get through the feasibility study of the fire issue, we probably are going to have to go into a design phase. And so, and then obviously into construction phase. And because the town has to pay prevailing wage, you know that what you think it's gonna cost is gonna be multiplied. So I would say anything you can put into stabilization that we can ultimately utilize for the fire the fire building situation, the medical personnel as well as for the fire department is probably, I mean, it's certainly a need, and we really need to prepare for the next 2 years to even get through design. And I would suspect it'll be 3 years before we put a shovel in the ground. But I'm not a Pollyanna about that, so I think 3 years before you get a shovel in the ground, and then we're gonna have to obviously go to the bond market. So one of the most important things for the selectmen to do, and I know we've talked about it, is to work very hard on bond rating that we haven't had for a couple of years due to our slowness in our auditing process. So we need to step that up and position ourselves in case we want to, or the town finally votes to do some construction.
Yeah, we have track of the numbers properly.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, at the last town meeting, there was $100,000 put aside for internet. Where is that, where are those funds at this moment?
They're sitting in the account marked internet.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if they,
They'll be turned over as free cash at the end of the year.
oh,
They're-
No, it was-
Oh, that's right, that account, pardon me, you're right. that was an article, so that will remain in that account
Yeah.
by itself, so it will remain, but it remains untouched. We've gotten nowhere with it.
It remains untouched.
Remains untouched. As we said, we're not gonna use it unless we have to, it's a bargaining chip, and it hasn't helped us much yet. But, so they're gonna dump 100,000 to put lines down a couple roads, and the numbers they're giving us, and get nowhere with it. But if we do add all these up, and just,
Yeah.
without the loader and that, we're already at 302. Without the loader and truck, we're at 302, I think, I did this right. Because we upped the roof and
Mm-hmm.
OPEB. That'll put us at spending 302, would bring us down to 200,000 left without doing the snow removal. So if we ended it there, snow removal will come out of that 200,000, would still leave us a balance of hopefully 130 or something to put into the free and the stabilization that was left. But we'll have to get that number in to know what that's gonna be. That would leave the DPW items off for now. And if, as Dr. Marshall said, it's possible those funds are clarified how they can be used later, it's possible to pick up something from that or off of the Chapter 90 funds, pick those up without going. And we can do a special town meeting for that, pick them up then. I don't think Chapter 90 is applicable to any of these other items here. And I don't know if the funds, the federal funds are going to be able to carry that either. If they do become available for that, we can certainly use them for that.
Yeah.
These monies become left over, we turn them back to the town meeting next year.
And you don't know what the government's gonna let you use.
Well, they put out some fairly clear guidance, I would say. I mean, there's some vagueness in there. I read both the 8-page and I skimmed the 150-page report. I mean, it's mostly, a lot of the funds are related around programs that wouldn't even really occur to our town. We don't have things like employment assistance, you know, for homeless folks. I mean, we don't really have, like, we're not set up like that, like a city is. And then there's the only real infrastructure programs on there is water, sewer, stormwater, and broadband.
Broadband would be a good target for us.
Sure would be.
But you can also potentially buy like an ambulance with it too.
Mhm.
Or I've seen a city that has fire trucks, cruisers, radios.
Is that approved though by the state?
Yeah.
Well, it's a federal, and so it doesn't matter what state it is, we all follow through the same federal guidelines, so. I mean, there's still a lot of questions that
Yeah.
need to be answered. I'll leave it at that. But I was on a couple of calls today, and somebody asked about like an ambulance, and they said yes, so.
And I don't know if anyone's talked to sewer or water, but
I've
the whole
reached out to
system's
them.
getting old. It's gotta get to a point, some point, when you're gonna need some upgrades or some replacement.
Well, that's on the capital improvement plan as well.
Well, once again, if we could hit it out of funds like this, spend them wisely, you know, if we come out of this and save on those enterprise accounts, then, you know.
One of the enterprise accounts is building a nice little egg though themselves, I think. Is it sewer or water? They have like 300,000 for upgrades, like, so they're building.
Sewer
that fund.
upgrades are
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, please.
We looked into possibly taking Hardwick in, because they're getting pressured by the state to do something, I don't know what they're doing, which is contaminating with it. And we looked into pumping it all the way out Wheelwright Road and up into the station down there. And we were something around $1.2 million improvements to get one more tank. We have two scrubbers, what we call the tanks, or the bars in them that scrub it. We've got to do a third one, do another holding tank. But the upgrades are, you know, very, very easily over $1 million to try to set it to take that stuff in. And that's just a portion of what we have now. So if we have to replace what we have, which I don't think there's any reason it would, it can get staggeringly expensive. I think right now they have redundancy, so they can shut half down, maintain one half, and keep the other half going back and forth. And unless we grow largely, that's never going to be a problem for us. The pipes and things that service it, where they keep having You always hear about going out for a sewer break or a water main break, and I would assume it's because those pipes are so old, sooner or later you're just gonna.
I don't remember a sewer break. Maybe water breaks, but not sewer.
I thought they had sewer issues.
Not that I know of. Anyway,
I'll have to check with Jason.
anyway,
Potts.
it's, yeah, there's a lot of expense to be had down there. To update it after 20 years, there's, things get worn out.
Yeah,
new-
are we
new-
past that benchmark?
Yeah.
20?
Yeah, yeah. So,
A little bit.
they're gonna need any funds they have, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. But that'd be a good way to spend some of those funds.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, you know, who knows what you anticipate years down the road, when it actually gets to that point, it's gonna be so much more expensive than, you know, you can assume inflation whatever rate you wanna assume, that's always hard to predict,
Mhm.
especially what's going on right now.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had to do major repairs right now, I'm sure the material.
Certainly, with
Crazy.
the amount of, with the amount of money that obviously we hope to receive, which is about $1.6 million through December of '24. I would hope, and I'm sure, that your watchdog ability will be ever vigilant as you consider how do we manage that amount of money with the restraints that will be put on it by the feds to do the most for the town. And that's going to take, I think, some really good thinking on all of our parts, because it seems so easy to just bring up willy-nilly X and Y, but when we really have the obligation to find out how we're going to spend this money and how we're going to do it by December of '24, I think it's a challenge for us to do it and do it well. And I certainly stand ready to help and assist. Don't have all the answers, in fact, I don't have any, but I hope that together we can put together a plan that makes a lot of sense for the community, not only for the next 2 years, but for a number of years going forward, because you and I both know this is sort of a drop in the bucket that we will probably never see again in a generation, so I hope we do a good job.
I think something interesting that I found out today too is that we just have to have a purpose to spend the money by 2024. We can actually spend it through December 31st, 2026.
Well, that's good.
And the reason I keep bringing up the water sewer, that infrastructure, and the internet, those are the biggest inhibiting factors in our town achieving some growth, attracting more businesses, attracting more developers for homes. We have a lot of land that could be developed still, a lot that we can't from watershed, but a lot that could be. But who's gonna go put 50 houses in, or a senior living complex in, when you can't offer an internet or water sewer? If you've gotta dig a septic system and put your own unit in, I mean, those are inhibiting factors on the growth of population for our town. Population growth, especially if we had a senior center, something like that, like they have up in Holden, that brings tax-paying population without students, which is the biggest hit of the taxes. And that's where most of our, our revenue is really in real estate, property taxes.
Yeah.
That's the bulk of it. So, but yeah, you still can't just dump it in there, you have to do something wisely with it to make sure it's gonna take us back.
The other thing we need to decide is where we are gonna have the public hearing.
That's already been set.
When was it? I know we had brought up the senior center.
I assume
Yeah.
it's in the center.
Yeah, this is.
That's the way we always used to do it.
Yeah,
I had to publish the public hearing by today, so it needed to be in the paper by today, so.
yeah,
And we can
So
still do a
it's gonna
Zoom
be
down
out
there
there.
for people that
Yeah, oh
wanna
yeah.
try to log in and Zoom and see
Yeah.
it.
and what time is that?
6:30? Six, I would have to look at
I
the
don't
notice.
remember.
It's usually, we meet at 6:30
And then the public hearing after.
Yeah,
Okay, maybe,
That's
maybe
usually
I
what
did
it
it for
is.
7 o'clock. I would have to look back at the public hearing notice, but it's either 6:30 or 7 o'clock.
But either way, if they're there for 6:30, they can watch your finance meeting before the public hearing. So we usually get there as well, 6:30, and go through everything. 'cause-
so if you publish the finance committee meeting for that night too, that we're having a meeting in the Board of Selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that covers everything on the list, most of it, we're gonna go right to, most of it will go off of
Yep.
appropriations, but we're gonna have to hit free cash for some of it in the end. Because we're gonna break the 273. Most everything can be an article for raise and appropriate with the exception of, the police chief vehicle is gonna go into his budget, and it looks like about 29,000's gonna have to come from free cash. So maybe the OPEB money and something else. You could even tweak it so the OPEB money comes out of free cash and drop the 60,000 down to whatever's appropriate to keep it neatly within the budget. Do it that way.
Yeah.
Because we may have to tweak it one way or the other if we have to, we're gonna free cash for that, but I would think 60 is safe, it should be like less.
And the 250th anniversary account, they're not asking for any additional funds out of
They-
this fiscal?
But they've asked for the what,
They just asked to transfer, but they're not looking for new.
they are, but they're looking for, they're really not anticipating a lot over the 5 years, so, we could also do that out of free cash, put some money to that out of free cash. He wasn't asking for a lot this year, put back or anything else. He suggested a few thousand to start it, but when we have the money available, we should start putting it in as we have it, you know. I wanna say they had some low estimate, like 25,000 from the town, and they wanna start fundraising, to try to get charitable donations for the rest. I wouldn't be objectionable if they wanted 25,000 in that account to taking that from free cash this year and putting it in. Because like I said, next year we'll start, if we will still have over 100 this year, 100 and almost 2, well, 1 after snow removal, and next year we should start with the 400,000 from our snafu with the special town meeting. And it should go up from there, so I'm really hoping next year's number's gonna be, and plus, we're gonna go back to the tax titles, they kinda took a hiatus from that this year, and that should bring in excess funds as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see, like 6 next year. Then we can really put some stabilization, start the capital stabilization account.
Yeah, it'd be nice, you know, with some of those expenses coming up.
And we're at, what, 7 something on stabilization?
7:30.
I wouldn't be against taking that free cash and starting that capital station this year to then get free cash. Where, I wanted to get the other account up to $1 million before we started that, but maybe split 50-50 and start the account. Get people used to the idea of.
I think we should start it somewhere, because I don't think the town should always rely on free cash to fund the capital purchases.
We've been talking about this for a couple of years, that account. Yeah, we've been, well, since I've been on anyways, this is that we started with a very low stabilization account at that point, trying to get posted money in every year.
Yeah.
And Andrew had said, we gotta stop at leaving 200,000 or 250 in free cash every year to have something to do with. It's, it's been healthy for us. But that capital purchase or.
And like, we're gonna have a windfall of saving money somehow, somewhere, whether it's enterprise or broadband or equipment, there's gonna be funds coming to the town that is gonna allow us to purchase other things regardless, that the town wasn't planning on purchasing.
Right. I think right now, we're in very good place with our town vehicles. I think most DPW are in good shape. I think the police are in very good shape. The fire department certainly, we still have some old engines, and
Getting there.
another engine soon, but, and the ambulance will always be going, but that is sort of, what do we said 79 or 80,000 the town pays towards the ambulance service, basically total, in a year. It's not bad for having ALS service in
No,
town.
24/7.
So it's good to have, and good to have double coverage, so. I think we're in good shape, I think if we can start to fund some of those trucks, equipment or anything, out of that account instead of, the levy will stop us from borrowing. It's again my fantasy of a retail shop for marijuana, picking up nearly $1 million in revenues for us, and that would be, would be phenomenal, because that money could go, a retail shop doesn't have to go towards towards marijuana.
Are you
Retail
back in
shop-
that? You want to back or shop?
Retail shop, you go right in the general fund.
No, I'm saying, you want to, I mean, you speak a lot about the
I-
retail shop. You want to open one, or, I mean, what's the
I
point?
hate pot. Never liked it, never used it, don't
But
like it, got nothing
it's
to do with it.
money in the till, right?
It is, the town's voted for it,
Yes.
that's why I support it. If it was strictly my opinion, I'd say, nah, we don't need to jump. I don't care for it, don't like it, don't like the smell of it, don't like to be around it.
I agree.
But it doesn't change the fact that it's always been here. I've smelled it all my life, I've seen people use it all my life. And
Mhm.
if the population has voted for it and wants it, I'd be glad to take tax advantage of it for the betterment of the town.
Right.
It's one of the few industries where the town can reap the benefits of additional income, because there's not many other industries where
Right.
the state has
That's
stepped
true.
in and said, all right, you're gonna get, what is it, 3.5%, 2.5%?
3%.
3% of the revenues.
The gross, yeah. And as they take 20+%. And they don't share back. I talked to our state rep. I asked Donnie Berthium, I said, why don't you give some of that money back to the towns that host the marijuana? You know, these towns that have the retail shops and have the grows and do all this stuff, why aren't you giving some of those state revenues back where it's generated from? Well, you know, they don't wanna do that. Why not? I mean, they're taking 20, let's say they take 20%. Why couldn't they give 5% back to this town? Or come out of this town? This, you know, general fund
They
money.
spent it already, that's why.
They have indeed, in many years to come of it.
Well, it's.
And even if they start funding all the unfunded mandates to the schools, like
Yeah.
transportation,
Yeah,
that would be huge.
that would be great.
That would be huge.
Transportation.
Huge. I don't think we'll see that either.
Yeah, I think that's a dream, but anyway, nice to think of.
Yeah.
I do dream, Maureen, I do dream. Very big.
Well, happy are those who dream dreams and are willing to pay the price to make them come true.
I'm here. I'm here. Doing what I can.
Any other?
Is everybody happy, satisfied? Did you need anything else from us while we're
I
here?
think we're in good shape this year.
I want to say nice job, everyone. Nice to see it went this smoothly. I'm sure you all enjoyed it for a change this year. It had to be so much different than past years. We don't have these nice discussions at this point usually. You know, we were gonna cut. But nicely done, nice job. Thank you, everyone.
Came in on a good year, I guess.
It's all you did, it's all you would carry.
Yeah.
It's not
Have you
always just.
decided where the annual town meeting's gonna be?
We've decided to go for the Quabbin High School. And our intention is to go to the, I'll get this right, cafeteria. I kept saying auditorium, and Dr. Watson said, no, not the auditorium. It's 105 degrees in there, you know?
Inside.
Inside,
Good.
but then everybody sees one, so when I'm indoors, we're targeting to do the auditorium, if not the gymnasium. But it sounds like the auditorium has a much larger capacity.
Cafeteria.
Cafeteria, right.
Yeah, so, yeah,
Yeah.
The auditorium is better than
you
cats.
can see where my head
Want to
is.
be in there.
I just like those nice comfy
The
chairs. in
chairs are great in
But
December.
it is hot.
Rain.
That's all that counts. So once again, the cafeteria seems to offer the best, for the acoustics, it's horrible, but a lot of room and a lot of ventilation, and it's kind of
Good.
controlled in there, I believe, so that's our target. So then they just gotta figure out where we're gonna do check-in, and I would imagine the main lobby doors up front. Woo-hoo. We're getting there.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I entertain a simple motion.
I'll second that motion.
I said an entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
A motion and second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Here now, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
All those in favor? Marsh?
Aye.
Thanks for joining us.
Aye. Have a good night, everyone.